There really should be a word for this process of piling stuff up to make it look as close to how you imagine it will be when it's finished. But this is about 30 seconds into an upcycle. So what we've got here is a military box. It's a chest that used to carry bits of gun. So there's a list of all the spares that it had. Sponge, pads, case striker, ordnance, tyre lever, and I think it went along with the field gun and its tender with all the kind of spare parts and tools. It's lived a couple of lives, and for me it was just storing bits and bobs that were not really needed, so I've had a big binning of it. So there's all sorts of interesting text on it. So this is canvas on the top, so 203, number 3, WWII, equipment 460, not really sure. And then the canvas wraps around the hinge, so these big metal corner braces. It's a nice tongue and groove construction. This is a piece of work surface from my kitchen. I'll just pull that off and have a closer look. It had rope handles, one I've cut to remove, one had rotted through that go through this hole screwed on the side, and I just regret banging over some screws that were sticking out because I might prefer to remove them. This latch is quite nice. If I open it again, so as well as that label, which would be nice to gum down again, it's been modified for storing other things, so someone screwed a batten through with a shelf. These are drawer fronts salvaged from a friend's kitchen he was removing, which are just slightly too long to use as shelves, but are just about the right depth, and I think I've got a few of these. So there's some salvage pine to put some shelves in. So what I'm imagining is this chest that was in the way and difficult to move as a cupboard with some shelves in for putting heavy stuff in with a worktop on top. So I haven't done any WWII work for maybe 6 weeks, and I'm trying to get a bit more order in here, throwing stuff away and tidying up. So I've got things like, squidgy cardboard box full of bits of metal. And that chest had sat there for ages with a big pile of things on top. And that's supposed to be a door that I can open and shut. So the prize today was going to be, I've got that space clear. And the question was what to do with that chest. Because to me it's a bit too good to throw away. So whether I clear space in a shed for it, but I think I'm going to make something of it. To get around the handles, this block's sticking up. It needs to sit on some feet. So if I screw a couple of those in the bottom, a couple of battens for shelves, and pop that top on, that could be a useful piece of furniture. Maybe in time I'll put it on wheels. Maybe something gets screwed to that top. But it'll be less floor space for sure, much easier to move. It might even be something that somebody else wants, even if I don't. My lovely track saw. Could use a jigsaw, could use a hand saw, that's what I used to do, but great luxury. Much cheaper ones are available. Someone's got a 10-minute workshop, it's got lots of videos on track saws. As well as a super accurate, super smooth cut. It's also taken most of the dust away, so that's another big benefit with these things. So that cut's just to straighten things up. Got a bit of masking tape on just to put the pencil mark on so I could see it. That's as wide as I can realistically make it, and also just about right for the project. So it's one of these nice things as an upcycle comes together when you find bits that look like they belong together. So width is settled. It's always good having a bit of an overhang so I can get clamps on. Now a decision as to whether to do it flush at the back, and I will do it flush at the back, but I want to make sure that the support is indented, and then there'd be that space there that I could get a clamp in. So it had to be kind of a slim head, but I would be able to clamp something at the back if I wanted to. But going to there, it can push against the wall. So I think that will define the next cut that way. So because this front edge is curved, I'm measuring from the middle, and the other side I could just measure 16 inches straight off onto here. But because of the way the scale works, it's metric one side, imperial the other, I've had to measure it 16 back, put a mark on the side, and use a square to bring the mark around the corner. This isn't something that needs to be accurate, but yeah, it's nice to do it as well as you can. The first couple of cuts have just been little ones. This is a long way, and I really don't want that to drop on the floor because it's a useful bit. It might tear as it goes, it might damage the floor. So I've got it all balanced on this piece of foam, which the saw can go through and into the foam without getting damaged. Some people just use bits of hardboard, but they set the depth very precisely. With the foam I don't have to. The foam that then gets cut up loses its structure, so I've stuck it to a bit of board. So this is my backer for doing these sorts of cuts. I found a piece of this 2x3 that I use a lot of, used to be a dog ramp. So if I cut a couple of little bits for the front, wide a bit for the back, that should do it. So I changed my mind, I went in this direction, and that's a nice height that I can probably get quite a big clamp under the back. These straps stick up. I could cut a little piece off that, but the saw to do that isn't easy to get to. So I'm going to space that with a bit of hardboard. I've cut it to double the exact width. So let's cut that down. And I have my spacer and screw that down. I'm putting these in like that rather than like that, as I want this to come to the edge and then have plenty of space left inside the wall thickness to get a screw in. I could have put it in like that, but it's all just an arbitrary choice, like whether I'm going to do that way or that way. It's just what I'm going with. Other saws are available. This is my ancient fret saw ex Shepperton props department, so this would have made some gadgets for films you've seen. I've added the lighting and a belt cover. It's barely holding together, but it's putting a shift in. So this is my dust extraction. It turns on automatically with the saw. Sure if the camera's going to pick it up. I noticed some letters here, AP6PR7. It felt like sacrilege just drawing a green line on it, but it's giving it another life. Just keep telling myself that. So I had a feel underneath to make sure that these are good places for the holes to go. It's time to get brave and drill. And the scheme is that that will get screwed up into the board, and then the whole assembly placed on here, and then screwed from inside the cupboard into there, and that way I don't need to break the surface of the board screwing down from above. So this one can be my template for drilling this side. So the base still needs doing, but getting very close with the top. So I calculated the offset, quite unlike me, 1 3/4 in, and I can just do holes down the centre line to get that screwed to the top, and they're all going to miss those screws coming up from underneath. Drill the first set of holes, mark this AA. I'll use that as a template just to mark for the next set of holes. Countersink. I'll go get a screwdriver. Great need for precision, which is a satisfying thing in itself, just being able to might use that in one of the big ones actually. So that little screwdriver is great. It's compact, and I've had it 20 years or so, so things have come on. But you can see there's quite a difference in power. Ready to go on top. So I've pushed the screws through so they're just peeping through, and the holes are size where those are quite firm. And then I can put the spacer just over the top like that, and I'll come back, put the top on and screw up. That's the old chest. So here's a look at it as a chest. This piece to hold the lid open. Writing makes a bit more sense this way up. Carriage 6-pounder Mark 1. Cradle, pad bearing face, gear firing. Over here we've got safety catch plunger, retaining catch plunger, breech block spring. Ordnance 6-pounder 700 weight Mark 1. So that's what it was. We'll go and work out what that is. And there's at least a bit of history saved and repurposed, even if it's a shame that it's not, you know, in a museum or attached to the real thing, but I'd expect they've already got one. As I've done on the top, I now need to do on the bottom. So I'm going to have a cup of tea to think about it, and I don't want to just put it upside down on that top and scratch the top. So I think that's the end of session 1 on this. Didn't have quite enough of this piece left, but I found this piece, and that's the little extra piece that came off the end, so just enough. And it was part of some bunk beds, and then I've cut wedges off the side for the Austin dashboard, I think. But I think they look quite nice on there, so I'm going to get those installed. This one I've just used a block plane to take the sharp edges off. I've got an old sanding disc that doesn't stick anymore. Just soften the ends. The other thing, I'm going to use a sanding paper at the end to take the edges off the top. It's a bit sharp to handle. It's been the usual fussing over, is the screw long enough, is it too short? I reckon these 50mm ones will do. So let's just get that all screwed together and I'm done. One thing I spotted is my wedges aren't symmetrical, so I've got the steep side on the inside. I think the lesson here is to get the screws. I was doing this again as I get all the screws started a little bit and then get them right tight at the end. So I'm out of time today, it's as far as I can take it, but I'm pleased. I might paint the feet black because they do jump out as if it's sitting on a couple of bits of scrap wood. But I don't think I need to paint the bits under the top. One potential use is to mount my bead roller, so it sits quite nicely there, it's decent height. I could keep all of the accessories and things underneath, perhaps pop it on wheels. But it's more useful than it was and takes up a lot less space. Painting the feet in my favourite all-purpose paint. The only thing to say here is that it's balanced on a couple of dowels so it doesn't stick to the surface, and I use gloves so that makes things really quick and easy. I paint so much stuff this colour that I can clean the brush just by wiping it on something else. So it's upside down, and I decided not to put shelves in yet until I can decide what I'm going to put in there, that I can get in the right height. I'm also reluctant to drill any more holes in it than I absolutely have to. So I have researched what it was, and it's a 6-pounder anti-tank gun of the Second World War. One quirk is it says it's a Mark 1 and they didn't go into production. So it looks like it was a prototype, but I'll get a little bit of PVA and glue all this down for now. Lots of this sort of stuff with brushes, so much easier for applying glue, which I do for all working stuff as well. And being PVA, it dries clear, so it doesn't matter if I go over edges and things. The paper here is stretched in the damp, so it's not going to go absolutely flat. It's really just making sure that it's not going to come up further and get ripped. So it's more preserving what's there, making sure it doesn't get worse rather than anything else. That goes quite a long way back. Someone just called saying terrible weather today, but I must admit I do like being in here when it's raining. Yeah, it's a lot better than it was. So these doors have been here 20 years and finally painting them. So a couple of years ago I refreshed the shelves and painted bright white and did that door, but haven't been able to get to these doors. So it's great to get that chest moved and now starting to get some paint on. It's also a benefit of having things on wheels. I love all the Henry Cole TV, Shed and Buried and Junk and Disorderly, where he says, "The next day," in his chipper upbeat tone. Well, this isn't the next day, this is some considerable time later. And one of the things I've been doing is I've got that shed empty of woodwormy sycamore I've been saving. It's just gone for firewood. It's a shame, kept it 15 years, but I want that storage space. I've saved some, so here's one big block. You can see the woodworm in it, but I'm going to make addition it and use it for forming metal. And the last job for this is to put this on wheels. I have a habit of using much longer screws than I need, but I'm worried about this splitting, so just 16mm fine. And they sit just nicely on the edge there. The other thing is screws don't have to go in straight, so I'm going in at an angle with these. So get them started and then over. And that's not a sin. Front heavy. So I think that's as finished as it's going to be for now. But it's a nice thing, it's a bit of history, and I'm pleased to save it and turn it into something useful.